was I supposed to talk about? Oh, yeah. So yesterday, Fidelity switched everyone's account numbers for NextBridge to a new QSIP and said, we got the shares, you got them. And then everyone's like, cool, I'd like to register as AST. You can't do that because we don't have your shares. I joked with folks that I want Fidelity to take a picture of my paper shares holding up today's newspaper as a proof of life to make sure that they actually exist. I don't think they have our shares. I think there's too many account holders with too many fake shares, and they actually cannot do anything about it. They need to whittle down. They need to get rid of some of those naked shares and whittle down before they can actually distribute this stuff. It may be one of those situations that when the chill is taken off and you can actually register, the first ones to register will get into AST and they'll get their paper shares, and then everyone else will be stuck in this weird limbo unless the lawsuits get something changed. No ruling from the judge in Florida today. We're still waiting on that. I was supposed to talk to Alan. He said he had exciting stuff to talk about, and then I got called into work and couldn't. So maybe tomorrow I can talk to him. Yeah. So that's what I have. Anything other? Oh, Twitter lost their Seattle offices. They didn't pay the rent, got evicted. Told everyone to go work from home. After telling them that they work from home, they're fired. So, there's that. What else, Monkey? It seems like the short hedge funds are getting ready to short oil. I don't know if you guys got that vibe as well, but that's like the last thing left that they can short is oil, because oil's been going the opposite direction of everything else. So that might be on the horizon. Curious investor, Houston, is there any hope with Acme at this point? Yeah. I mean, we still need a ruling out of the courts. So we have an emergency injunction at TRO in the Northern District of Florida, and the judge could say, no, denied. Just as easily he could say, yeah, approved. We're going to get 2 more days of trading. So that's what we're waiting on. We're waiting on a ruling from the judge. Anything outside of that, I think, is possibly tied up in the courts until a ruling is made. So they might not be able to do much of anything until the court says something. But yeah, there's hope. There's always hope. There's always hope. Nothing is set in stone. The powers that be will try desperately to keep this stuff at bay. But if they keep pulling shenanigans like this on other stocks that are more popular than these little small caps that we dealt with, they do on something big where there's, I don't know, maybe 4 or 10 million investors, then shit's going to hit the fan. And it's going to be huge news. So they've got to watch their steps now. They know that they're fighting a really, really, really large force of people. There's 64,000 plus of us. That's a lot of people to deal with. It's a lot of phone calls that your poor little call center people have to go, oh, fuck, they're calling again. Oh my gosh. Boss, they're calling about NextBridge again. The boss is like, oh, read the script. I don't know. The upper reps won't tell us. And there you go. Andrew Stewart, Houston. None of the securities lawyers will call me back after I explain MMTLP. Feels kind of fishy at this point. Here's the thing about the security lawyers. They know that FINRA has immunity from damages. So you cannot sue FINRA for damages. Not only that, they have immunity from providing discovery in a lawsuit. So they don't have to show you anything, and you can't sue them for damages. They've got immunity from the federal government for their role as a public-private partnership to regulate the markets. And you can't Freedom of Information Act them because they're not a federal agency. So they're a private company. So you can't say, hey, you got to give me this information on your of the stuff, because they go, I don't have to. I don't do that at all. Look at this law that gives me immunity. So eat one. What we need, and so securities lawyers, and they're like, what are we going to do about it? which is why Rosa's method of seeking the emergency injunction and immediate relief, she's not looking for damages. So there is no immunity for FINRA in that instance. So that's why she's looking for immediate relief via an injunction. So they cannot protect themselves from that and say, hey, I've got immunity, because immunity only qualifies for damages. And so the securities lawyers, unless you're calling them and say, hey, I've got $1 million retainer I'm going to send you right now, they're going to go, hey, I'm not going to play this game. So that's just kind of where it is. That unless you can just give them a fat retainer right off the bat, they're not going to play ball. Plus, if you could get information out of the if you could somehow subpoena documents from FINRA, they're going to send you so many documents that it's going to cost you millions just to process the documents. We're talking 1,000 file boxes full of millions of documents, 99% of which have nothing to do with anything that you need to look at and are just there to waste your time and cost you money. So these lawyers know that it's going to be a 10-year process. It's going to cost $6 to $10 million just to prosecute the case. And who's going to pay for it? They're not going to front you for it. They're going to do a contingency in that point, because it's not like, not like they're going to get the settlement offer and was like, we'll settle for $1 billion and back off, and then they can take a third of that. It's going to be 15 years, and people are going to be dying during those 15 years and not going to be able. It's just going to be a pain. So the security lawyers are like, I'm out. That's what I think is happening. Ideas Matter 7707. Hey, yeah, Houston. It seems the brokers are just making up their own QSIPs. How do I know my shares are real? Short of getting them transferred to AST, but Schwab also says I can my shares in my account. Can hold your shares in your account. I mean, you should be able to hold them in your brokerage account. We should also be able to register them like that. They're really, really, really trying to slow down the process. And I think they're doing that by doing things like, because it's paper shares, you have to request a transfer via mail, and they just want to just take weeks and have us be like, I can't just click on something online, because they know they don't have our shares. And so the few people that actually go through with it and do the registration, get everything sent, they'll process those ones, and everyone else is just lazy or fed up or whatever. I'm probably going to wait until I get a ruling out of the federal court. When the ruling comes through, if it's a no, if they deny Rosa's motions, then I'll write the letter, get the registration, have everything moved to AST. If it's 2 more days of sales, then I'm going to hold off. I'm going to see what prices these stocks sell for when they're forced to close those positions. And if it's worthwhile, sold. If it isn't, register. So I'm waiting. I'm holding off and I'm waiting. Gonna need to pick a rock. Tatiana Popova. Hello, what do you think about transferring shares to ASC account under my name? Someone did today through Fidelity and paid $100. They said it could take up to 4 weeks. Thanks. Yeah, it's going to take up to 4 weeks because they don't have the shares. They told everyone they did, but I don't think they have shit right now. I think they're just trying to, play some magic wavy hands, don't look behind the curtain type thing. Hey, Houston, from Cheshire K. If trading is opened again, do every single MMTLP share have to be closed? And I mean, to the last share, what happens if trading stops again and you have unsold shares? I think it would come down to what the judge's order is. If the judge says trading will be open for 2 more days, and you brokers, FINRA, DTC, SEC, all of you guys must make sure in those 2 days that every single solitary short share is closed. And I want to see the accounting. then the only way they're going to be able to close all those short shares is to make the price go absolutely nuts, to the point where anyone who has shares is like, you know what, I'm out. And that's it. That's the only way they're going to do it. If they pussyfoot around like, well, I'm not going to pay that much for it, and then they end up still having short shares in those 2 days, then the judge, Rosa, whoever would have the ability to sanction like crazy. And those sanctions could just be ridiculous. And Rosa would at that point be able to do her whole, like, what do they call it? The remitting bodily, whatever was she talking about, when you just, you arrest the person and throw them in jail for contempt. I forget the term she used for that, but it sounded cool. She could probably do that because they'd be in contempt. They didn't do what the order demanded, which is close all those shares. And the only way they can close all those shares is by offering insane prices for the shares. So that's how they have to do it. Mark Sloan asks what happened with Rosa's case. You would think the urgency of the case, he'd have made a decision by now. I would have made a decision by now, but then again, I'm completely biased. I would have been like, day 1, 2 more days of trading, make it happen. But I'm a biased person who doesn't see this as necessarily urgent matter. A judge, it's very likely the judge could be waiting specifically to see kind of what unfolds over the course of a week or two and see if it resolves itself without him having to make an order. Because oftentimes, if it can resolve itself and they don't have to do anything, then it will resolve itself and they don't have to do anything. But I think I don't think it's going to resolve itself. I think he's going to have to make a ruling one way or the other. Quit stepping on the keyboard, cat. And you're sitting in front of the chat, and I cannot read it because your big fat butt is in the way. Okay. Guitar Stuff. If MMTLP gets his 2 days, will that make MOAS impossible for other plays, as they'll realize what can happen in larger shorted stocks? It's very possible, or it triggers everything else because everyone gets so margin called liquidated that the entire thing comes crashing down. I think it's very possible that both those things can happen. The cat is just in a mood. He's like tearing through pencils right now. Kitty, don't eat the eraser, you little weirdo. It's gotta taste terrible. Yeah, you got it in your mouth. Yeah, I don't like that, do you? Bailey says, I see MMTLP going nowhere for months. BW Brand says it's possible if Rose doesn't get her way. The judge is going to have to make a ruling. The whole point of emergency injunction at TRO is like, now, man, now. And if he pussyfoots around for a long time, I think she could apply to ask for another judge. She should be able to like blackball that judge and be like, this one. At least he can do that in state courts. I don't know about federal courts. I don't know anything about federal courts. But if the judge doesn't do anything, then they're not doing their job. They're a judge. They make rulings. That's what they do. They're going to have to make a ruling at some point.